Hey folks, thank you for joining me for today's video. My name is Sarah Vanderheiden and I'm the Creative Services Coordinator for Addison Public Library. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to use the Creative Studio's Silhouette Cameo 4 to cut stencils for making a painted wood sign. The Silhouette Cameo 4 is an electronic cutting machine that can cut paper, adhesive vinyl, iron-on vinyl, and stencil vinyl, which is the material we'll be using today. In October 2021, we had a limited number of kits available in the Creative Studio for pickup that had the supplies needed for this project, including the 8-inch wood panel that I'm using, pre-cut stencil vinyl, transfer tape, paint, and paintbrushes. Not included in the kit that I recommend having available is a paper clip or other form of metal pick. This is called a weeding tool, and it's available in the Creative Studio for in-library use. If you weren't able to get a kit, no worries. This video is going to walk you through how to prepare the designs in the Silhouette software, Silhouette Studio, how to cut them, and then how to assemble into your painted wood sign. So, let's get started. The first thing you do when using the Silhouette Cameo is preparing your design in Silhouette Studio. If you were able to get one of our kits, we prepared the design and cut it into stencil vinyl for you. If you weren't able to get a kit, or if you just wanted to learn how to do this, you would follow the steps in this part of the video. Silhouette Studio is the unique software that has to be used when using the Silhouette Cameo. It's a design software that is free to download and install on your personal computer, and it's also available for the computers in the Creative Studio. Just a brief overview of how Silhouette Studio is laid out. Here in the center is our material, our design space. So this piece here mimics the cut mat, which you'll see later in this video. And this white piece here mimics the size of our material. On the left side, we have some icons for some features, like the select tool, the shapes and line tool, and the text tool. On the right side, we have other features that let us do other editing stuff, like the page setup, the trace panel, and the text style panel. If you're never certain what any of these icons mean, you can always hover over them, and a little label will pop up telling you what the icon means. So for instance, the first thing we should do is make sure our document is set up the right size. So I'm going to head over to this very first icon on the right at the top. And if I hover, it says Page Setup Panel. So that's the one that I need. And you want to make sure that for your machine, you have the Cameo selected. And for the cut mats, we have the 12-inch by 12-inch cut mat. The media size is the size of the material you're using. It usually defaults to 12-inch by 12-inch. But for instance, if you were cutting in letter size paper, you would want to switch to 8.5 by 11. For today's project, we're going to stick to the 12-inch by 12-inch. So for our project, we are making a home sign that has the shape of Illinois with the word home over top of it. So the first thing we need to do is find an image of the shape of Illinois. I already did that. I went to Google Images and downloaded an image. If you are using images and fonts, you want to double check their copyright licensing so you're not violating any sort of copyright. So to open an image, we're going to go to File, Open. I saved my image on the desktop and I named the image Illinois. You should be able to import JPEGs, PNGs, and TIFF files. So I clicked on my Illinois shape and hit OK. One thing to be aware of, when you insert an image, it automatically does not convert it into a cut file. So even though we see the shape of Illinois, if I were to cut this right now, the machine would be confused and I would be left with kind of a rectangle. So in order to use these images, we need to do a feature called Trace. So Trace is available on our right panel. It's the fifth icon down. If we hover over it, it will say Open the Trace panel. And what we need to do is select Trace Area. So this allows us to tell the machine what we need to trace. So what we're going to do is click and drag over top the entire shape of Illinois. After you've selected the area, it's going to read your image and it's going to convert what it's reading into yellow. So if you see yellow, you're good. If you don't see yellow, or if you don't see enough yellow, you need to adjust your threshold setting. So if it's too low, it won't read any part of your image. And if it's too high, sometimes you might get too much detail. Then we're going to hit trace. And what actually happens is it creates a copy of your image. So on our right is the original black and white image, and on our left is just the outline in red. These red lines are cut lines. So this is what we need to use with Silhouette Cameo. So we can click on the black and white version and delete it. The next thing we need to do is prepare the word home. So to open a text box, I'm going to go over to the left panel. I'm going to hover over this A icon, and if you see here, you'll see a label for text. And I'm going to get this cursor, and what I can do is click anywhere in my design material, and it will open a text box. I'm going to type the word home, and I'm going to change the font. Up here at the top where it says font, it says Arial. I'm going to change that to Another Day. So this is a cursive font, and Another Day might not be a font available on your computer. Every computer has different fonts installed, but you'll get some fonts to choose from. And so one of the reasons I'm using the font Another Day is there are special characters that add those tails that you saw at the beginning of the video. So to add those special characters, we need to go to the text style panel, and we need to go to the glyphs section. If it doesn't say Another Day here, you want to switch it to Another Day or to whatever font it is that you're using. Not every font has special characters. Each font is unique. And what I'm going to do is scroll down until I see the fonts that have these cursive tails. And I'm going to look for the H with the tail coming out on the left. And so I inserted it right in front of the O. And so I'm going to delete the original H I had. And I'm going to do the same thing with E. I'm going to delete my original E. And I'm going to replace it with an E that has the tail going to the right. And so here we have the word home. I'm going to make it really big and zoom in so you can see the letters better. And so one of the tricks with letters, with cursive letters, is that they look like it's one word, but they're not. So you'll see here how the letters overlap and we have these red lines. Again, anywhere you see a red line, that's where it's going to cut. So if I left it as is, it would cut all of these letters separately, which is not what we want. So to fix that, we need to do a feature called weld. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. We want to select our word. So you'll see here how the whole word is selected. And with the word selected, we want to go up to the top and we want to weld. Weld is a special feature that will fuse overlapping lines together. It's different than grouping. Grouping won't fuse lines together, only weld will. Once you weld, you can't edit the text. So you always want to make sure you do that after you've spell checked your text before you weld. So now you'll see that those overlapping lines are gone. We just have one word fully united. I'm going to zoom back out. So now we have our shape, our Illinois shape, and our word home. What we need to do is make sure they're sized well for our project. what I like doing is going to the shape tool, and the item we're decorating today is a wood square. So I'm gonna just make a random rectangle, and I'm gonna go back to my select tool so that I can click at the sides and I can expand it to be 8 inches by 8 inches. That is the size of the wood panels in our kits. It doesn't have to be exact because all we're doing is using this as a visual aid. So there we have about 8 inch by 8 inch. And now what we want to do is drag our Illinois shape in the middle. And when we resize the Illinois shape, we want to make sure we're clicking and dragging one of the corners. And I'm gonna make it approximately 6.5. And then you'll see here that my word home is too large. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna click and drag, and this time I'm gonna make it smaller, about 6.5. Next, what I recommend doing is just lining them up to see how it's gonna look. So I'm gonna select everything. And then there is a align option, and I'm gonna align so everything is centered. The one thing I don't like here is how the word home overlaps some of the shape of the Illinois. So when I go to actually paint this, what I'm gonna try and do is place it so the word home lines up there. So now we have it sized accordingly. What we can do is get rid of this 8 by 8 square because we don't need it. And the last thing we need to do is move our different pieces so that we can cut them. The silhouette will cut your material exactly where the red lines are. So in this case, it's in the center of my cut mat, which means I'm more likely to waste materials. And the word home is overlapping the shape of Illinois, which is not what I want. So I'm actually gonna separate these two, and I'm gonna move the shape of Illinois in the upper left corner, and I'm gonna eyeball and leave approximately a 1/2 inch to 1 inch on the sides. So I have a little bit of space. And I'm going to rotate the home word so it's vertical, and move it next to the shape of Illinois, again with about 1 inch, maybe 2 inches of space. And this way I only need about a 7 inch by 7 inch piece of vinyl. And I'm gonna line it up on my cut mat in the upper left corner. So this is how you prepare your design. The last thing you would do is go to File, Save As. I recommend choosing the Save to Hard Drive option. There is a cloud storage you can use, but if you want to save it to a flash drive or email it to yourself, you would save to hard drive, pick a file location, and give it a name. It does have to be saved as a Silhouette Studio file type. Silhouette Studio files can only be opened by Silhouette Studio programs, which is what you need for the Cameo. So then you would hit OK, and you would come to the Creative Studio to cut your vinyl, which is what I'm going to show you next. Now that we've prepared the design, the next thing to do would be to cut it with a Silhouette Cameo 4. To do this, we need to be connected to the Silhouette Cameo, either by the USB cord or by Bluetooth. Once you have the Silhouette Cameo connected and turned on, you are going to hit the send button here in the upper right corner, and it should load your send settings. Send is the cut feature. So this is the screen we need to be ready to cut the material. You'll get a preview of your design on the left side. On the right side will be the settings for carriage 1 and carriage 2. We are cutting today with the auto blade, so we're going to be using carriage 1, and it has already detected the auto blade for us. The way that the auto blade works is that we need to make sure our material is selected
and it will adjust the pressure and the speed accordingly. We're using the stencil vinyl material. So if it doesn't say stencil material in this box, you want to click on it to get the drop-down menu and scroll all the way to S until you find stencil material. At this point, you are ready to load your cut mat into the Silhouette Cameo. And once it's loaded, you would hit the send button down at the bottom right. So I'll show you next how to load your cut mat.
Now that we have our design ready and we have the materials selected on our computer, we are ready to cut the stencil. To do that, you're going to need your Silhouette Cameo 4 powered on and connected to your computer. You are going to need a cut mat, and you're going to need your stencil vinyl. The stencil vinyl that I'm using is the Oracle brand, and it's designed to have a stickiness on the back that is kind of a light tack, so that way you can use it, stick it on your materials, paint, and then peel away easily. You want to make sure that your material is going to fit your design. So our design is roughly about 6 inches tall, so I cut this to be about 7 inches tall. I have my design arranged in the upper left of the cut mat on the computer. So what I'm going to do is take my cut mat and my stencil and line it up in the upper left of the cut mat. Once you line it up, you want to kind of push it down to get any wrinkles or bubbles out. And then what I recommend doing, because these cut mats have adhesive that wears out over time, I recommend taking some tape and just taping down the corners a little bit. And what this will do is prevent your stencil from shifting as it cuts if it loosens up from the cut mat. So you should have a cut mat that looks like this with your stencil vinyl attached to it. And you want to make sure it mimics what your computer sees. So again, on my computer, my designs are lined up over here. So that's where it's going to cut. Next, we are going to load this into the Silhouette Cameo. There are guide marks, a white guide mark on the left of the machine. That is to line up your edge of your cut mat, not the edge of your vinyl. So the actual edge of the cut mat, you want to line up with that white guide mark. And then you want to push it towards the machine so it's under these rollers. And the arrow up button is the load cut mat button, so I'm going to tap it. And it's going to load that cut mat in. So you should now feel that it's nice and secure, it's not going anywhere. If you load it in wrong, or if it's crooked, or if it doesn't feel secure, you can unload and then try again. So now that it's loaded in and I have my design going, we're ready to cut. I'm going to zoom in so you can see the cut in action. So now the cut is done. We're going to use the down arrow to unload the cut mat. And what you're going to do is remove your stencil vinyl from your cut mat. So here we have our stencil with our design cut in it. The next thing to do is to get this ready to use it for our painting step. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut these apart because I need them as separate pieces. I'm also going to cut this off so that way I can reuse this part for another project in the future. Now, if you were able to get one of our kits, what you should have inside the bag is a piece that looks like this. And what we need to do for this one is remove the Illinois shape. Because we're going to lay this stencil on top of the wood and paint in the Illinois for our project. Also in your kit should be the home stencil. The thing that we did for this one to help you out was to remove the words home in there. And the reason for that is to properly remove these, you usually need to use a weeding tool like this one. We have these available in the Creative Studio, so if you ever come to do a project in the studio yourself, you can ask staff to borrow one of these. But what this is a pick that you can use to pick at your stencil to help peel it up. One of the hard parts with these letters is the very center of the letter you want to keep. So I'm going to use the weeding tool to poke down the middle of the E so I don't lose it while I peel the rest of the word. So here we have the word home. You can see that the inside of the E is not placed right, so I'm gonna just push this back into place and press it down firmly so it kind of stays there. And so now we have our stencils weeded. Again, if you were able to get a kit, we prepped the home stencil for you. So what we did was just line it up with our transfer tape, cut it down to match in size, lay our stencil down, peel the transfer tape, and line it up on top. So this is what the piece in your kit should look like. For the Illinois one, after you remove the inside of the Illinois shape, you can take the piece of stencil that was supplied in your kit So you want to take that piece of tape supplied in your kit, peel it so you have your tape piece, and lay it over top your Illinois stencil. So here we have both our stencils with transfer tape laid on top of it. And so now what we can do is use the transfer tape to move the stencil onto the wood panel and paint our stencil in. So now we're almost ready to paint. Your kit has acrylic paint in it. You do want to make sure that whatever surface you're painting on, you have it protected with newspaper or drop cloth. And you want to make sure that you're wearing clothes that you don't mind getting paint on. So what we're going to do is we're going to paint the Illinois shape first. We are going to lay down our wood panel on a flat surface. And the way that this transfer tape works is you are going to peel the transfer tape, and it should peel the stencil with it. And so the purpose for this is so that your stencil doesn't get tangled or torn or ripped up when you go to line it up on your wood. And so we want to make sure that we have the sticky side facing the wood or touching the wood. And you want to line it up as best you can so your Illinois shape is in the center of your wood panel. Once you have it on the wood surface, you want to start pushing it down and getting wrinkles out. And then what we need to do is remove that transfer tape. When you do remove the transfer tape, you just want to be gentle so that you don't pull up the stencil or rip the stencil or chip your wood. Once you remove your transfer tape, you just want to push down your stencil one last time to get any bubbles out and make sure it's nice and smooth on your wood surface. And now we're ready to paint. So for this, we're just gonna take our foam brush, dip it into our acrylic paint, and we're just gonna paint in our stencil. It's up to you how thick you want your layer to be. You can do 1 layer of paint or 2 layers. And so there I have my first layer of blue paint. What we need to do is let this dry completely before we remove the stencil. Again, if you want to put on a second layer, you can. So after the first layer dries, throw on a second coat, let that dry, and then remove the stencil. I've applied 2 layers of paint and I let it dry. So now I'm going to peel our stencil. And you just want to be a little gentle peeling just so you don't chip the wood. You can avoid chipping the wood by sealing it before you start your stenciling and painting process. So that's something to consider if you notice, if you're doing a lot of these projects and you notice a lot of chipping. So I peeled off our Illinois shape stencil. We are now ready to place our home stencil over top. The goal was to have the word home in the center of the Illinois shape. So what we're gonna do is peel this off with the transfer tape. You do wanna be careful on this so you don't lose the center of those letters. So the O and the E, you wanna make sure you don't lose those little bits. If they are coming off, you wanna lay your stencil back down and apply pressure to try and peel them off this white wax paper. So the white we can discard. We're gonna flip this around so we have the sticky side facing down on the wood. And we wanna line it up and straighten it out as best we can. And we're gonna put it so the word home is inside the shape of Illinois. You're gonna apply some pressure, get out any wrinkles, and then you're gonna peel that transfer tape. Same thing with the Illinois shape. You want to be slow at this just so you don't tear or peel up your stencil. And again, especially because of the center of those E and O letters, you want to make sure you don't lose those. Once you remove the once you remove the transfer tape, you want to push your stencil down to make sure there's no air bubbles or wrinkles. Sometimes you want to use your fingernail or your library card or a gift card to kind of push and use as a squeegee. Once it's nice and flat, you can then paint it in, just like we did with the Illinois shape. I recommend doing 2 layers, and you want to make sure the first layer dries before you do the second layer. My second layer of paint has dried, so I am going to peel the stencil. And again, I'm going to do this slowly because I don't want to chip the wood or the paint. So I removed most of the stencil. We have the inside of the H, the O, and the E left. You can remove these using your fingernail, or if you were in the Creative Studio, you could use the weeding pick, or you can use a paper clip. So whatever works best for you. I'm gonna try with my fingernail first. And so there we have our sign. You'll notice I did chip my paint a little bit, so if you need to, go back with a thin brush, a really tiny brush, and just do some touch-ups. So now you should hopefully have a finished wooden sign made with some stencils that were cut with the Creative Studio's Silhouette Cameo 4. We hope you enjoyed this tutorial and it helped you learn about Silhouette Studio and the Silhouette Cameo. If you want to show us how your project did, feel free to post about it on social media and tag us. And always check back on our YouTube channel or on our Creative Studio page for more projects or programs in the future. Have a nice day.